Welcome back, everyone. I'm really happy today to have Nick Zuba on the show. Nick is the Deputy Director at CPACE Alliance, and CPACE Alliance is a nonprofit business association promoting CPACE best practices across the U.S. They're really our go-to source for data and all things CPACE. So, Nick, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Olivia. Pleasure to be here.
And today we're going to be talking about something really exciting that's happened for the Texas program specifically. Earlier this month, yes, we're still in February, the Keeping Pace in Texas Working Group approved a change to the LTV cap on CPACE projects. So previously, you could go up to 25% of the capital stack, and now you can go up to 35%. And so that is expected to have quite a bit of impact in terms of demand for the program in Texas. And I have Nick here today to just kind of unpack that a little bit. So, Nick, I'm going to have you focus on Texas first. So, you guys just released your 2024 data, which is super exciting. And I did the math, and Texas PACE assessments made up roughly 9% of the total US volume. So, how do you expect this LTV change to impact that share moving forward? Do you think we'll become a bigger player on the national stage?
Right. So thank you for the question. And so at this point, I would say, short answer is yes. We do believe that this could be helpful in getting Texas to be a bigger player on the national market and helping to increase the amount of volume potentially that the programs could actually be able to produce in the coming years that will move forward with. So basically, what I see here is that Texas's population, by the way, is 9% of the total United States population. And given the fact that we did actually calculate, I calculated the same thing, 9% of the volume that was produced in Texas last year was that of, basically the entire then national volume. And basically, you're pulling your weight, so to speak, then in terms of actual, representation to the population. So that's all in line with one another. And so basically, also too, the average project size in Texas was about $11.6 million, which was also right on track with what the national average was. Actually, it was slightly above, because the national average is 11.4 million, according to the data we collected. And so, yes, I still say that this is a big opportunity now for the program to increase even, I think, its average project size, and maybe even potentially, the overall volume size. Now, of course, the caveat to that is that there are other requirements that are also part of the program, namely being the savings to investment ratio. And so it's probably hard to say how much it potentially could go up. But I just think that change from 25 to 35% is a big deal in this case. And it also, by the way, puts you in line with what other programs across the country do in terms of the LTV requirements, that being like Nevada, Georgia, as well as Tennessee, so other southern states and other western states. So hopefully, yes, this will be showing, I think, a very positive impact for Texas writ large.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it sounds like we're kind of right where we need to be based on population and all of that, but it is exciting to see that this could open up even more opportunity. So how do you anticipate this change will impact property owners and developers, specifically the ones that are looking to do this type of financing?
I think it's going to be a positive impact for both of these stakeholders. For property owners, now what it's going to enable them to do is to be able to finance even more energy saving measures in their projects. This is going to now allow them to be able now to get even more savings and reducing their energy consumption in their projects when maybe before they've been maybe forced to have to leave projects out because again, just was coming up to those particular requirements and they couldn't go and finance even more. So I think that is, I think, certainly one help for the property owners. Then for the developers who are always trying to figure out what is kind of the cheapest cost of capital that they can get into a capital stack to develop a project, they're going to look at CPACE, I think, with more intrigue nowadays. Because just for the fact that CPACE is a lower cost of capital than other forms of subordinated debt, whether it be like mezzanine or preferred equity type of financing, the fact is that then they'll look at this, I think, with more, like I said, intrigue, and then that will then be a bigger part of their filling out their capital stack than before. And in terms, I think, of the kinds of improvements, I think that would actually benefit now from this increase. We're talking about probably like energy efficiency type improvements, because in my experience, I used to run the Connecticut Green Banks program, and whenever I saw it coming up against our particular requirements, it usually was like energy efficiency measures that had to fall out of a project. And
Mhm.
so I think now with the increase in the LTV requirement, this will allow now for those kinds of projects to potentially get back into there and be able to be implemented. Of course, still subject, of course, to the calculation of the savings investment ratio.
So you're referring to the cost burden that can come with some of those energy efficiency improvements that sometimes is value engineered out. This gives more leeway for those.
Yeah, because normally what would happen with energy efficiency projects, they may not save quite as much,
Mhm.
but then they tend to be a lot more costly. So you're right that what happens probably is that value engineering, and then you have to then figure out basically then what's going to fit the best within the requirements and be able still to maximize the amount of savings you can get.
Got it. Absolutely. So, what about specific asset types or even project types in terms of new construction versus renovation versus, in Texas, we have a 24-month look back period for recapitalizations. Do you think this change will favor any of those groups, one more than the other?
Yeah, I say definitely for new construction, this is going to really help that particular part of the commercial real estate market. And then in particular, in terms of the types of subsectors of the commercial real estate market, multifamily has definitely been a very popular one. And I think with such a dire housing shortage and the inflationary pressures on housing costs, it's going to be even more, I think, impactful now to help address that issue by building more of these multifamily type properties. I also have seen it very popular with hospitality, so hotels and other resorts have really made use of CPACE popularly in the past, and then even other kind of retail establishments as well have actually been using CPACE quite a bit. And so definitely those, I think, from a starting point, I think are the ones that I think you would really see a lot more impact of CPACE for in going forward with this LTV increased. Um, and then, of course, as I mentioned before, I really think that, yeah, energy efficiency projects are really going to be the ones I think that you're going to see definitely get more of that look in this case now with a higher LTV ceiling that you can work with.
Absolutely. So let's wrap up our conversation about Texas before we talk about some of the nationwide stats that came out in y'all's report. Where do you think volume might trend in Texas this year? I know I'm asking you to pull out your crystal ball. We're still in, a tricky capital markets environment from the perspective of banks not going to their full capacity on lending for CRE, which is a silver lining for CPACE because it gives us more opportunity to fill the capital stack. In Texas specifically, our markets have been pretty well insulated from some of those challenges just because we're growing, we have population increases, we've got a lot of corporate relocations. For Texas specifically, where do you think the market's headed this year?
I still think the future is pretty bright for Texas in terms of its volume growth, because I think as you've seen, the volume growth in Texas has continued to trend upward, even without these particular underwriting requirements now being put in and these changes made. So I think at the end of the day, given that you've situated yourself, I think, in a pretty good spot right now, that you put yourself in a set up for a really, I think, that kind of successful position. I think there's no question now that now when you add this LTV increase now we're talking about that you can really maybe see a trend continuing to move upward for getting more of these projects completed and helped. Because I agree, and I think, yeah, we'll talk about maybe in a second what are these macroeconomic concerns and pressures that we're seeing nationally. The fact is that even in the face of all that, we still continue to see a growth in the amount of volume that we've seen out of these projects getting done. So I think at the end of the day, I think just with how well positioned Texas has already been and seeing an upward trend, I think now with this LTV increase, it's only going to, I think, continue to help the program grow.
Yeah, I was really thrilled to see y'all's report come out about 2024 volume and that we broke another record. Let me know the exact number, but it was in the billion, or where was it exactly? Total nationwide volume.
Yeah, so the total,
255?
the total nationwide volume was 2.6, about $2.6 billion and across about 225 projects.
Got it. Mhm.
And in which case, so yeah, then that's what gave us the average project size of about $11.4 million, which again, that is now the highest that average has ever been, and that has continued to trend upward. So the fact that matters that over the last year of 2023, that was an increase of about $400 million in activity between 2023 and 2024. So even with a lot of uncertainty still, and especially about what, kind of direction we were going after the presidential election and what's going to happen with macroeconomic decisions, The fact of the matter is that it's still continuing to grow. And even since 2022, that volume actually has doubled, even in the span of a 3-year period. So, I mean, the fact of the matter is that we're still continuing to see that growth nationally in this case. And even despite the capital markets pressures, as you mentioned, and other sort of potential headwinds that we might see because of potential tariffs or
Mhm.
basically because of other sort of Federal Reserve decisions that might have to happen as a result of that.
So you mentioned increased project sizes. I know that's a really interesting trend in terms of the assessment size that's coming out of these projects. Any other major takeaways from the findings in 2024?
Yeah, what I think I would take away is that probably what you're seeing with this trend now of more financing being given out, and as well as maybe seeing then a reduction in the total amount of projects, that's probably suggesting to me that more of these new construction projects are getting done, and that we're seeing just overall much larger sized projects getting done, which means then, and basically you're getting more of these projects moving towards new construction and these larger overall kind of projects where now CPACE is really constituting a big portion now of a capital stack. So I think that also too is something that's underlying, I think, the data as well. That if you just look probably more granularly at each project, you're going to find that CPACE is now really constituting a good portion now of a capital stack and is enabling certainly a lot more economic development opportunities to happen, not only certainly within Texas, but of course across the entire country. So I think that's also probably something you would probably see in the data.
I love that. Yeah, it's super exciting to see new construction projects using this financing. And I know we have a lot of dirt that's about to be turned in Texas. And so hopefully developers are aware of this great benefit and can leverage it. Nick, that was all the questions I had for you. This was such an enlightening conversation. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And of course, I'd love to be back in a future time.
Yes, we'd love to have you back. And guys, if you have any questions about CPACE, Nick is an expert. You can feel free to reach out to him via email. I'll have his email in the show notes. And as always, if you have a project in Texas that you think would be a good fit, please reach out to Lone Star Pace. We're happy to help in any way that we can. All right, Nick, have a good one. Thank you so much.
All right, the same to you. Have a nice day.
Bye bye.